All right, I want to talk about the issue, a very sad issue of unbelief in the Eucharist, specifically among Catholics, which is kind of sad to even say. But we all know it's there. Of people just not believing that Jesus Christ is present at the Mass. They don't believe, or maybe they were never even fully even catechized on this. And if they weren't, I want to talk about how some ways we can kind of re-catechize them, not just in belief in the Eucharist, but re-catechize them back into the faith from the foundation of looking at the Eucharist first, because the Eucharist really is the foundation of the Mass. I know for me personally, it's the way of, once you kind of understand what's actually happening and you have a full belief and faith in that, just preparation for the Eucharist sets the stage for everything else in your life. So everything all kind of builds upon each other. But if you actually look at your typical Novus Ordo Mass. I say Novus Ordo Mass because the traditional community is going to be kind of skewed in numbers of like people actually attending and young people. But the issue always, between any Mass you go to across the United States, where I'm at, is across any small group you talk to, they want to get more young people coming to church, more specifically more families coming to church. And that is the good kind of snapshot into the number of practicing Catholics percentage-wise in a given area. Because we all know there's tons of Catholics, self-proclaimed Catholics out there in the United States, but the churches are not being filled, and they're still dwindling, not just in numbers, but dwindling in young people actually attending. And I think a big part of that is not just that they don't have time or they're not kind of lax in their faith, which is definitely part of it, but if they really believed that was Jesus Christ, at Mass, at the tabernacle, they would be flocking and coming to Mass. And unfortunately, I think that's why the Eucharist is so foundational. Now, it's great that we have this Eucharistic revival going on in the church. I think it can do some good, but I mean, I'm going to be kind of realistic here, based on what I'm seeing. I think it's good, but the only people really going to hear or see that will be people that's already going to Mass anyways, which is good, because I think in a sad way, that Eucharistic revival is actually re-catechizing and kind of reminding Catholics like this Jesus Christ is present, which I think is needed, because we saw that scary percentage in numbers of Catholics that didn't believe that think it's more just kind of symbolic. And so, and even a step further, if you want to look at adoration, you can kind of give yourself a nice gauge in that parish community as well, because we all know if you go to adoration in a typical community, it's either few and far between. They might even have adoration because no one shows up, or you're going to see a few people, generally older. You're not going to see any families coming. And to me, I think it's one of the easy ways, looking at the Eucharist specifically, to actually start engaging people with their faith. So when I'm talking to people, especially Catholics, because this is part and parcel a major difference between us and Protestants, is when I ask them, why aren't you going to Mass? And again, I'm not just going to jump up and say that and be accusatory to them, and I'm sympathetic because this was me, but I'll say, why aren't you going to Mass? What are some reasons? And some people, especially if they're younger people with kids, they'll say something to the effect of like, well, I just don't have a lot of time. It's the kids won't sit still. And one person told me recently, well, I'm not getting anything out of it. I can't even hear the homily. The kids are so crazy. That was their reason. And other people have said something similar effect, where basically it comes down to they're not getting what they want out of it, or they don't see the need to really go to Mass. So both things are kind of saying the same thing there. And to which case, to me, there's a number of things you could say, like, obviously it's the Lord's Day, it's a commandment, you're not going there for yourself, etc. But I also tell them, it's the Eucharist is there. You are getting fed there. That's, to me, again, I've been there before, where the homily was the most exciting part for me. Now the Eucharist is the most exciting part. But for a lot of people, I know they kind of go and they attend Mass, and that's like begrudgingly the thing they got to kind of sit through. That's not exciting to them. It's kind of repetitive. They know what they're kind of getting into. But that's a good chunk of the Mass, and that's at every single Mass. And so I kind of tell people, this is a way of kind of engaging them from a catechesis standpoint, is saying, do you believe that Jesus is present? And you'll get kind of one or two responses. I found some people will say like, well, yeah, I do, you're right, and they'll kind of acknowledge that, and hopefully maybe that sits in them a little bit. Or you'll hear from somebody else that'll basically kind of admitting, they won't say like, no, I don't, because I think there's a lot of cognitive dissonance that's kind of going on here, but they'll say, they'll basically get to the effect like, well, I don't know, maybe, or they're kind of hinting that it's more kind of symbolic, but it's, they like that it's there. Maybe they might say something to that effect too. They like that it's there, kind of the tradition of it. They would feel amiss if it wasn't there, but they don't really take it as seriously as other people do. I think that's another huge percentage of people as well. Because again, that's the kind of question I ask them, is like, why are you Catholic in the first place? If you don't believe that's Jesus Christ present, why would you want to go to like a different denomination? That's very simple. You can go like a Lutheran, you're kind of Catholic light, or you can kind of get a communion service, but it's not literal. It's not, you don't have any of that theology in there. And that's kind of the argument I'll kind of get into that hopefully kind of engages them, because once they kind of start thinking of it that way, because a lot of people maybe have heard that, and it's kind of, they know it's kind of a thing, but that's about it in their kind of cradle Catholic way of being raised. But the point I try and make to them is not that I want to push them out of the faith. I want to bring them in, but I also tell them, does it make any sense to go and say you're part of a religion that you ultimately don't even believe in? Because odds are, obviously this is going to be true, if they don't believe that's the Bible and Jesus Christ, we can probably bank on that the vast percentage of basic church teachings and dogmas they're going to have issues with. So that's why I think the Eucharist being the summit of the Mass, a huge aspect of our faith, a foundation of our faith, that's something to kind of hit right away up front, because there's no sense talking about any other kind of hard-hitting issue or dogma or way the church operates if they don't believe in the Eucharist. Because I think if you have a full faith in the Eucharist, which I've met other people who've said this, and this is kind of a recent discussion I had with somebody who had issues with, I think I mentioned this even in the previous video, had issues with their spouse not receiving communion who wasn't Catholic. And again, it was kind of poor catechesis. I think the person really meant really well, but they didn't understand that. And but they did believe in the Eucharist and that part of it. And so again, we got into discussion of being in a state of grace, stuff like that, stuff they've kind of vaguely heard about. But it can make logical sense then why, just preparing yourself for Mass, preparing yourself throughout the week to go to Mass, and just the reverence that then comes, and accepting that you have this huge gift at Mass every week that, to me, I look forward to it every single week, and it's one of the reasons I try to get to daily Mass as well. This video is getting kind of long, but the point I want to say is we have this tremendous thing in our faith of believing that our Christ Messiah is present in the tabernacle, present at Mass. We get to consume him, and we receive very special graces from him if we're receiving reverently. And it's unfortunate that the vast majority of Catholics either, one, don't care, or they just don't know about it. So I think the best way to kind of engage a lot of the issues of the time, taking it one step at a time, and I think the best way to do that kind of first and foremost is inquire and talk to people about the Eucharist, and kind of start at that level first. That's just kind of my opinion on the matter. I'd love to hear what you guys think about it. Thanks again for listening.